Dynamic Women Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Linda Crater celebrate the thoughts and opinions of magnetic, spirited, and influential women. Each week, bold, brilliant women spark vigorous conversations on the complexities of life, love, and happiness. Now here are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Linda Crater.
Hey ladies, this is Sandra Beck and I'm here with Robin Bieseman, Linda Crater, Frankie Picasso, and this is our Party of Four roundtable for today. We're going to be talking about commonality. And when we talk about commonality, what comes to mind for me right away is how my boys, my dad, my ex-husband, guys can get together all the time with different walks of life, different people, different everything, and play a poker game and not think anything about their ideology, their religious beliefs, their parenting ideals, their look, their anything. They can just sit down and play cards, then get up and go about their day. Women can't. We look at each other, we make judgments, we make decisions. We can't just come together easily as a group for a common cause without identifying our differences. And so I want to open the roundtable discussion today to ask, why do we have to have commonality before we can get together and enjoy each other? I'm going to go to Linda Crater first.
You know, I find it fascinating that we're talking about these differences or taking a judgment or a discernment before we come closer. Because for me, initially, I went to a women's college, and so I got along with women. We did not judge each other that way at all. But when you came out of college and entered real life, that's where what you're talking about was identified to me. And I noticed that it had to happen. Why does it happen? Probably because everyone is from different walks of life. And if you've not had close personal relationships with other women where you have the commonality of, in my case, education or classes or something we were doing together, you don't know where the common threads are. So there's a lot of inquiry. You know, how are you? Where do you come from? What do you love to do? As you say, finding ways of identifying what we do. And when we have something in common, that's generally what we glom onto. I'm one of those odd people, though, that when someone talks about something about themselves, I'm more intrigued by the differences. And that often forms way I first start to communicate with someone, because I would like to know more about them that way.
Frankie Picasso coming in from Toronto.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Linda. You know, I also went to an all-girls school. I have to say that I have found and have said before how interesting it can be that a woman can walk into a washroom and find out the most personal, intimate details about other women that they don't know. They'll just start talking random things because we do have things in common. We're women and we understand, you know, what it means to be a woman. And we share a lot of commonalities just by, you know, our gender. And so we are very open and can be open with women. Where men, you know, they can sit down at a poker table, but they won't know anything about the other person at the end of it. We will know your whole history. Right?
we share it very openly. You're right.
Yes.
Well, we do. I mean, look we're on the radio sharing this openly. And now we're going to go to Robin Bieseman, Eugene, Oregon.
For me, women are just so relational. I truly do care about how you're doing and what you do and how you are. And I love to learn, like Linda was saying, I love to learn about people. I love to learn about people who aren't the same as me, and just keep growing and learning in that way. So it's obvious. My husband, in his business, I'll ask him something about his employees and he doesn't even know how many kids they have, for heaven's sake. You know, so it's so opposite.
Well, what's interesting to me is when I go to these events, and this is just not specific to Los Angeles, we've got, you know, Toronto, Washington, and Oregon represented here today on the table, on a round table, is how we check out people. Like, I can go to an event and I will look at what a girl's wearing, I'll look at her hair, I'll look at her. I don't look at the men's hair. I don't look at the men's suit. I don't look at it and go, oh, that tie doesn't go with that shirt. I'll automatically, you know, kind of go to the woman. And then when I've talked to men in my life, they're like, oh yeah, did you see? She's good looking. She's wearing red. You know, they don't get the details, but we all check out the women. No one checks out the men. And when you get dressed, do you get dressed for yourself? Do you get dressed for how other women will perceive you? Or do you get dressed for the man in your life? And I'm going to go to Linda Crater first.
I find that fascinating that you asked that. I have always gotten dressed for me. And that includes, if it's a rainy day, I'll wear something bright. I mean, to me, clothes and the choices I make and the colors I choose all are helping me be the best person I can be that day. And so I'm terribly centered on that part. I just make it for myself because I don't really judge. I don't judge women on what they're wearing or how they're looking. I do take a look, though, at how they carry themselves. If they are accessible, if they're warm, if they're inviting. If they're not, I do notice that more than what they're wearing.
Frankie Picasso, Toronto.
Linda, that's so interesting. I think I'm an equal opportunity fashion police. I'm looking at everybody. I love, I do love, I guess because I'm an artist, aesthetics are important to me. Maybe not my own, but other people's. I do like to look at pretty things. So that is one thing. I think that I definitely dress for myself. And it used to be, if it was work and I had to get a job or something like that, it would be a red power suit because it made me feel good. Like when you really need to feel good, you have to have something in your wardrobe that always makes you feel good. And will make you feel, special. And so that's really important. I think everybody needs one of those. But, going to an event, it's for me. Other women, I'll look at other women's fashion. I'll go, gee, yeah, I wish I could still wear that. But there was probably a time I was jealous of it. But now, as I'm heading into those twilight years, not as much. Maybe it's just, oh, gee, I wish. But I'm happy for them, and I'm happy to compliment them. And one thing that I did learn was that an acknowledgement is different from a compliment. And when you acknowledge somebody and how beautiful they look or what they're wearing, that's sincere. That's sincere, and I think that's really important to be sincere.
Robin Bieseman, Eugene, Oregon.
Well, I live in Eugene, Oregon. So Eugene, Oregon is unique in itself, and a lot of casual grays and browns and beiges, and I dress urban. So I dress for myself. I feel comfortable in that. And I must say, girls, that I really do like to look at well-dressed men. I like men in suits and everything's together. I don't know if I don't think I judge anything. It's just what it is, but that's what I notice.
Well, and I think, that's true. It's like if a man is dressed in a suit and he looks really sharp, I'll acknowledge the whole package. But whereas in a woman, I might admire her scarf, or I might like her shoes, or like the other day I was in Smart and Final, and this girl, the checkout girl, pulls this handbag from under the checkout counter. She's getting her lipstick or her chapstick or whatever, and it was the most beautiful bag. And I was fascinated by her bag, and she's there in her Smart and Final uniform, and I was just enamored with this bag. But I don't notice those things on men. But I'm in Los Angeles, and it's very self-centered and very, I'll be straight out and tell you guys that there are times that I dress for the group I'm with rather than for me. So if I'm going to like a PTA meeting for the school, I'll dress a certain way. If I'm going to a work meeting, I'll dress a certain way. If I'm going to a date, another way. And I get confused because I really don't know who I'm dressing for at that point. I know that I'll feel uncomfortable if I'm dressed incorrectly for the event. Like, that's really clear. I went to a wedding one time up in the giant redwoods in Northern California, and I wore a nice dress because it was a wedding, and it was a hippie wedding, and everybody was in like tie-dyed t-shirts and sundresses. And
from Eugene, right?
I look, yeah. But I looked stupid and I felt stupid. So the question was, where is the connection between me feeling good, like for me to get dressed for me? Like, in all honesty, if I'm dressing for me, I'm wearing black leggings, an oversized sweatshirt, a turtleneck, and these ratty fingerless gloves that I love. That's not appropriate for like 95% of the world. So I don't really know who I'm dressing for.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't know. The interview is not about me. I'm the host.
Oh, but we're not letting you off the hook.
Frank, for one. I think when you ask who are you dressing for, Sandra, I mean, I dress for me the outfit I'm going to wear is something that I like and it's for me, but it's still going to be appropriate for the group I'm going to. Maybe I didn't make that clear. Like I'm going to dress, if I'm going to a business function, I'm not going to wear my leggings. If I'm going to, but it's still going to be something that makes me feel me. Does that make sense?
Robin Bieseman.
Well, depending on where I'm speaking and singing and doing what I do is, if I'm in Dallas, I'm going to dress a whole lot different in Dallas than I am in Minot, North Dakota. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Because I want them to accept that. I mean, I will never dress probably like Eugene, but there's a difference. Depending on if I'm hanging out with kids, I might wear my Converses. If I'm with older women, I might dress in a different color, but that's only because I'm up front. So for the connection, that's all that is. But as far as peers are concerned, you know what? You are who you are, and I am who I am. That's how I feel.
Well, I think it's interesting, to talk about these things, because when I was younger, or I look at the girls who work for me, I've got some 20-somethings that work for me, and they tend to dress the way the magazines say to dress, or they tend to dress the way media tells them to dress. And I did the same thing in my 20s. I was definitely fashion forward and following, what the trends were, because I didn't have my own sense of style. And we're coming up on commercial break, and we're going to talk about a sense of style when we come back from the break, because my sense of style has evolved, and the more comfortable I've gotten with myself in my own skill, the less I've needed to adorn myself. I used to wear jewelry all the time. I don't wear as much jewelry now. I wear a couple subtle pieces. Very, very different than when I was in my 20s. So when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about how did our personal style develop? What were our influences, and where did we start, and where are we now? This is Dynamic Women Talk Radio. You can find more episodes like this on dynamicwomentalkradio.com. Our guests today are Robin Bieseman from Eugene, Oregon, Linda Crater, my co-host from Washington, D.C., and Frankie Picasso from Toronto, Ontario. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk more about the evolution of our personal style.
We're Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we'll return after these short messages.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Did you know that the average teenager drinks twice as much soda as milk? Since 1983, sugar consumption in the U.S. is up 28%. Why is that? There are several reasons, but one of the most common is soft drinks. 20-ounce beverages have become the norm, and it's not surprising to find that 43% of our sugar comes from drinks. Sugar is blamed for poor nutritional diets. USDA data shows that people whose diets are high in added sugar eat less calcium, fiber, iron, protein, and many other important nutrients. Fat-free foods are also a culprit. Since sugar is fat-free, many people tend to think it's okay to eat as much as they want. Remember that just because a food is fat-free does not mean that it's calorie-free also. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Can muscle turn into fat? It sure looks like it can, but the reality is it can't. When you have tight and defined muscles and you quit working out with weights or exercising at all in some cases, it seems like your hard muscle turns to flab. Remember, muscle and fat are two different entities, and one cannot turn into another. What happens is when you stop exercising, your muscle fibers grow smaller while your fat cells grow larger. With exercise, your muscles make the fibers grow, and when you stop exercising, they reduce in size. Likewise, your body's fat cells can change in size depending on how much fat each one stores. So keep your body fit, healthy, and strong. Keep up your exercise, and don't let conditioned muscles become flabby. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond.
ladies. This is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Linda Crater, Frankie Picasso, and Robin Bieseman, and we're talking today about commonality and the evolution of our personal styles. Now, when I was in my teens, I was very athletic. I was a swimmer, so I wore workout wear to everything, everywhere, 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 and I had green hair, and it was just burned to death from the chlorine. Then I go to college and I experimented with a few different styles. One of my styles, I actually shaved my head and left just a little bit of hair in the front. And my Republican conservative military father called me Buzz. And, people would ask me when they'd see pictures of me from that time, and they're like, oh, was that because you shaved your head because your brother had cancer? No. Was that because you had a political ideology? No. And it really came down to, as I was standing in the mirror one day and I'm like, I wonder what I would look if I shaved my head. And, that was really the sum total of the thought process. There really wasn't anything deeper than that. And I've experimented over the years with really short hair, really long hair. I only dyed my hair black once. I'm naturally like a real white blonde because my roots grew in and it really looked nasty with it looked like old lady roots and a 20-year-old head. So I kind of stuck with the same color, but, and I went through magazine after magazine to find out what I thought looked good on me. And I'm continuing to evolve. My look has continued to evolve over time. And, I don't know how much my look has to do with my identity because I don't think my identity has changed that much. So I'm interested to hear from the other girls at the table today in our Party of Four roundtable. How has your personal style evolved over time? And was it a reflection of what you were thinking and feeling? Or were you following trends or just having some fun? I'm going to go with Frankie Picasso first.
Oh,
Toronto,
wow.
Ontario.
I loved platform shoes in the 70s. And I used to work in 6-inch platforms and I could walk in them really well. And I, had very long hair. I had probably one of the first people around my area who had a shag, but I kept the bottom like down to my waist, but I had the shag haircut and I loved it. I was always like the trend setter wherever I was, because I guess my personality was risk kind of taker, but it also went with, my style also went with, my jeans had, because of, now the women's liberation and all that, I had patches on my jeans, with the now symbol and the women's symbol on them. And then as I evolved out of this kind of hippie-ish kind of look into, I wore medical wear for a while. That was kind of fun. But I've always been a jeans girl, loved jeans as long as I could fit in them, but I've always worn makeup. Ever since I was 11 years old, I've always worn makeup. And it wasn't until this year that I actually went out of my house without makeup on. And I thought, well, I'm invisible. People don't see me anymore, so I can do that. But it felt strange and different. It's kind of liberating in a way. But my style
Why
has
did you say
definitely
invisible?
changed.
Why are you invisible?
I think it's age. There was a up until 50, I could walk into a room and people would still look at you and go, oh, she looks pretty good. But it seemed like after that, something happened and people weren't looking anymore. And it's kind of, defeating, I guess, self-defeating or whatever. But I thought, yeah, you know what? Now it's like they don't look anymore. It's just, I'm invisible. I'm the invisible woman now. So there it goes.
Wow. See, I can't imagine you walking into a room and you're so striking looking. You've got striking features, striking hair, and I wonder if I don't know, Robin Bieseman, Eugene, Oregon.
Well, because of what I do, I hear a lot of women say this, that they do feel invisible. And for me, it's just like, you're fabulous no matter how old you are, but it's how you look at yourself. And you have gifts and talents that you have, or whatever. And it's my job to help the people in class to understand who they are and that they do have such positive things to contribute. And it is all in that attitude. I mean, if you look in the mirror and your shoulders are down and you're, oh, well, whatever, that's how you're going to walk out the door. If you stand in the mirror and your shoulders are back and your chest is out and you have makeup on or whatever you want to do, and you dress a certain way, you will walk out the door like that. You have as much to contribute. I'm sorry. I don't mean to do this. Just feel like I'm in class. You have as much to contribute, Frankie, as anybody else, and
Oh, I
that's
don't
what I
feel
want women to
invisible to
feel.
myself, Robin.
No,
No,
to others, right?
wrong. Yeah, it's just there's a certain age that you pass when when that gets passed on to the younger ladies in a room. That's all I'm saying. I don't feel unconfident or
Oh,
like I'm
okay, cool.
good or anything like that. No. It's a different feeling. That's all.
All righty. Good job.
Conflict. No, I'm sorry.
Never,
Oh,
never.
nice.
Understanding.
Fight. No, I'm just kidding. A little levity
Who are
here.
you?
Linda Crater, Washington, D.C.
Well,
I got you now.
I laugh because I am 5 feet tall. And so my fashion style started out of the fact that there were no petite clothes when I was growing up. So my mother was a seamstress and sewed a lot of things. And I learned to sew my own clothes about the age of 10. And so it was me who was creating my own style and creating actually clothes that could fit me. You talk about jeans. There were no jeans that fit a 5 foot tall. Well, I wasn't even that tall then. Preteen, it just wasn't possible. So I didn't end up wearing jeans until I think my 20s because they didn't fit and they fit boys and I was curvy and it just was really funny. So my immediate style in high school was I would call it tailored and classic, and I have never deviated from tailored and classic my entire life. Long hair, petite, the whole thing. And I was fascinated by some of the old classic styles of I wore scarves when scarves weren't cool. I really just, I had friends who were all tall and lithe and willowy, but I also knew inherently that I could not wear the clothes they were wearing because I would look completely ridiculous. So I really feel as though I've more or less maintained the same style, but I'm so much more confident in feeling really happy about choosing the right colors, adding that scarf even when nobody was wearing scarves. But to go back to what Frankie said about being invisible, at times in my life where there were some big challenges, I can remember looking in the mirror and I saw nothing reflected back. So that invisible feeling that you're mentioning to me, and it eventually went away and there was that person looking back at me in the mirror, and I thought that was a fascinating thing to go through because it made me realize that I had the control over whether I was going to be invisible or not, and a lot of it had to do with being okay with who I was and what I thought and what I believed. And so the more comfortable I became with that, my style didn't really change. It's still as classic and tailored and very similar to what I've worn my entire life, but it suits me.
I was just thinking classic and tailored. That's so much work.
No, it actually isn't because you just know.
You always
then
know
if
what you can wear.
Well, the best part is if you are tiny and small, you stay that way and then you just add to things your whole life. I have clothes that are older than my children.
Oh man, I've never been able to do that.
Whenever I'm shopping, I'm looking for clothes that, I look for clothes that won't match and go with the other ones I have in the closet. And every once in a while I'll break out, and get something different. And when I do concerts, that's a whole different thing with a lot of sparkle and everything. But with wearing everyday clothes, I look forward. Now we have these scarves, oh my word. They can go with everything. I had a great Christmas for that. So that was fun.
Why do you think that, I'm just going to ask you a question. What do you sleep in? I wear these crazy woman pajamas. I like the ones with the big, owls on the legs, and then they have, a top that matches with an embroidery, and they can be flannel or that squishy fleece. Or my PJs, my little short frilly ones. They're so much fun to sleep in. I'm going to go, Frankie, what do you sleep in?
Nothing.
Oh my gosh.
Good girl.
I really sleep naked. I can't sleep with clothes on. I have pajamas that I wear before I go to bed, but once I'm in bed, I can't sleep with clothes on.
Now, what about you, Linda Crater?
I actually wear those really pretty chemise nightgowns that aren't nightgowns at all. They're just beautiful little chemises, and I have always felt that was a gift to myself to feel pretty every time I went to bed.
Robin Bieseman.
And I'm with Frankie.
No. Okay, so we
TMI,
got
Sandra.
one classic,
Yeah.
nudes, and a goofball. The reason I say this is I wonder what does our sleeping choice say about us? Like for me, I'm very funny and silly and girly and goofy, and so that's the one time in my life that I can put something on maybe that is just silly and is just for me. But I can't imagine sleeping naked. Maybe I have some big hang up about being naked. I don't know.
I was reading an article the other day. Sorry, because I don't sleep, as you know, Sandra, very well. And this article said, make sure you sleep naked because you will sleep longer.
I saw that article.
Did you see it?
I did.
Yeah. So I need all the help I
What does
get.
it say about you? Is that what you said, Sandra?
Yeah.
It says that I'm happily married
Yeah.
for 43 years. Thank you very much.
I love it. I love it.
Well, I just think, these are the things that I always wonder about. Like when I was young and I was going to school, I used to wonder what the nuns wore under their habit. Like, I wanted to roll a pencil and go down on the floor and look, and not trying to be a pervert or anything, but I just wanted to know, what do people do when other people are not looking? Because I look at all of us and say, okay, we're all public figures at a greater or lesser extent in our careers. And so as public figures, we have to do certain things, dress a certain way or look a certain way. And, going out and, on stage in fuzzy pajamas, isn't going to fly in most venues. So when all is said and done and the lights are turned down and the makeup's off, what do people do? And I think it's a lot of fun to talk about these things. And when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about what our parents wore. And is that a reflection of the generation and is it a reflection of our times? When we come back from the break, we're going to visit with Robin Bieseman, Linda Crater, Frankie Picasso, and myself, Sandra Beck. That's our table of four, our party of four for today's show. We'll be back after the break. And if you like this episode and you want more like it, go to dynamicwomentalkradio.com.
We're Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we'll return after these short messages.
Did you ever wonder how reindeer survive the severe cold? Well, they snuzzle around for some moss to eat. Moss contains a special chemical that helps keep their body fluids warm. And they're going to have to keep warm if they're going to pull Santa's sleigh every year. Santa's sleigh was originally called a winged doodle. Both male and female reindeer grow antlers, but male reindeer drop their antlers at the beginning of winter. I can't help but wonder why Santa's reindeer from Rudolph to Blitzen had male names. Since they had antlers, they would have had to be female. We women should have known only females would be able to drag a hefty man outfitted in a red velvet suit, originally called a hoopin' daddy, all around the world in one night and not get lost.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Low-fat foods can be healthy or unhealthy, depending on what you choose to eat. Whole foods like vegetables, fruit, beans, rice, and potatoes are all low-fat and good for you. Processed low-fat foods are a different story. Eat this, not that, says that the term low-fat is synonymous with loaded with salt and cheap carbohydrates. Many times when the fat is taken out, it is replaced by unhealthy ingredients that are not good for you. The New England Journal of Medicine found that over a 2-year span, people on low-carb diets lost 62% more body weight than those on low-fat diets. It's always important to keep your fats low while choosing good, healthy foods to eat. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond. If you're a fan of Fitness Minute, like us on Facebook at Fitness Minute with Annette Hammond.
Hey ladies. This is Sandra Beck of Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Linda Crater, and we are joined today at our Party of Four roundtable, Robin Bieseman and Frankie Picasso, and we are representing Oregon and California. Where's Washington? Is that its own state? God, my education's so bad when I'm on the air. I can't even remember Washington, D.C. or Maryland. Where are you?
I'm outside of Annapolis, Maryland.
Annapolis, Maryland. Okay, I keep calling you. I'm just going to say Washington, D.C. because it's easier. And Eugene, Oregon with Robin Bieseman. Now, before we went to break, I just wanted to ask a funny question to see how things have changed. What did your parents wear to bed? And we're going to go with Robin Bieseman first.
Well, I have no idea.
Really?
No. I remember I would walk in my sleep and my dad would have to my mom would elbow him and say, Daryl, she's up again. So my dad would go, and I think he wore underwear, and I think he put his white terry cloth robe and find me and walk me back to bed. I have no idea what my mom wore. Probably some polyester, slinky, sleeveless nightgown.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Linda Crater.
I'm still envisioning the fuzzy bathrobe and walking you back. That was a smart woman with the elbow. What I do remember was pajama bottoms for my dad and my mom in a pretty nightshirt kind of thing.
Wow. Okay. Frankie Picasso.
Yeah, my mom had a flannel nightgown for sure. Maybe a little bed jacket. My dad nude. Always nude.
Wow. My dad always had boxer shorts on, and my mom had a very modest nightgown. And it, but the funny thing is we all had to really stop and think about and remember back to what our parents wore. I thought that was kind of interesting. And I love that you guys are all willing to be, kind of team players and go along with my questions here, because that's not the way it is today. It's the way I was raised. It's the way that the suffragettes went and, got together and got our right to vote and many of the rights and freedoms that we take granted today. But we don't see that. We see a lot of mean-spirited, mean girls. And I think that goes against the commonality that we all need to have. And I think back to recently, there was that Playboy bunny that took a picture of herself at a New York City gym with her hand over her mouth, laughing at the old naked lady who was showering behind her. And I hope she went to jail. I mean, I just stick her in jail and send a message to everybody that our privacy rights are invaded with things like this. Mm-hmm. But more than that is the meanness of that. Like, if I was that judge, I'd be like, you know what? You might be a pretty little naked photograph chick, but one day you're going to be stepping on your own boobs when you brush your hair. So I just, we all get old, we all age, and things change. But one of the changes that I've seen is the meanness that comes through social media, through television programs and movies. And the things that come out of people's mouths these days are just insane. And I'm going to go to Robin Bieseman in Eugene, Oregon first.
Well, what I see a lot of, and I work with teens too, what I see a lot of is there's a lot of just meanness altogether. They live in a world, a lot of them live in worlds that are not healthy and that are not happy, and they're put down, so they put down others. They're hurt, so they hurt others. Mm-hmm. I think that they feel like they are entitled. And if they're not going to be loved and cared for, they're going to do what they have to do. And they're taking care of themselves. And in order to do that, they have to do this and to others. And it's painful. It's painful to watch because it's not necessary. And our whole world is crazed right now,
It's hard. And I want to know, Frankie, what do you see happening up in Toronto? You get to represent your country.
Your whole country now.
Your whole country. I speak for Canada. Well, we were talking, the show was based on the premise of what, Madeleine Albright. And she said there's a special place in hell for women who don't help each other. And I love that. And I think it's really true. And there was a time when I was growing up that women were, in groups, and it was so special to be able to have women to talk to and tell you all your stuff to. And now you've got these TV shows, like even called Mean Girls, and maybe it's, the internet where people can cyberbully and have actually, had girls commit suicide because of how mean other girls are. And what is it with them, their need to attack, other than, their own fear, their own lack of confidence, lack of love, maybe. I don't know. But I do find that there is a special degree of, women haters. Women are haters now. They don't love one another. Yesterday I was at brunch, and this older woman was sitting at a table with her family, and every time we were at a buffet, and every time she came back to her table, she would turn around, she would touch me on the shoulder, and she would say something to me. And it was interesting because I didn't give her eye contact. I was just with my husband, but she felt this need to talk to me every time. And I thought it was really cool. And maybe I was giving off this energy like, hey, talk to me. But, I knew that I could talk to this woman. Like, here was an energy where I could talk to her and she could talk to me, and she felt open enough to be able to, hey, more than just how's your day going? There was calories on the food. She goes, don't look at the calories on the food. It's okay. I'm like, is she saying I'm fat? Like, what is she saying to me? But, there's that openness. But the younger girls are, they would never do that in a million years. They would just look and be snide and make comments about, what you're wearing, or, a fat roll or whatever, because it just makes themselves feel better. It doesn't make you feel better.
Does it change when you get older, do you think? When you're confident in yourself enough to say whatever, who cares what anybody says about me? Do you think that it changes then, or are there mean women our age?
Oh, I think there's mean women our age for sure.
Okay.
And the mean women raise the mean girls. I see that.
Yeah, I think they do. Because it's an obsession to be better than everybody else.
Wow.
And yet they haven't found out that, you don't need to be better. You just need to be a better you.
Well, and there used to be these girls, Robin, and Linda and Frankie. I used to call them the flagpole girls. They were these mean moms that would stand at the flagpole at our elementary school where the other parents would drop their kids off or walk their kids in. And the flagpole girls would stand out there, and they would look at the other moms. They'd look at what they're wearing. They would snicker. They were just like the mean high school girls, like, that would be, and they were a clique. You couldn't, like, if you went up, like, I used to go up and say hello to them, and then they would like look at me, and like some would say hello, one would roll her eyes, and one would ignore me, and I'm like, oh my God, I hate you guys so much. And those mean girls raised really mean kids. I mean, they all had daughters. They had daughters who were my one son's age. They're not at the flagpole anymore because I wrote an article about the mean flagpole girls. So now,
oh my goodness!
Now
so
the
there,
mean flagpole girls. They actually, three of the moms went to another school. They actually left the school and went to another school. The fourth mom's still at our school, but she's only the mean mom that stands by the front door now because the mean girls went away, but they were still mean to me, and I sound ridiculous, as a 40-something woman, but they were mean to me just like I was in sixth grade all over again. I wanted to punch them and like bang them with the flagpole, but I used a different method to break them up because they're just awful, and they were creating awful little girls too. So that's my opinion. That's what I see, that it was almost like handed down from mother to daughter, like, I'm a bitch, you're a bitch, and our grandchild's going to be raised with that same kind of ideology.
Mentality, yeah.
Well, look at the shows though, Sandra. The ones tiaras and the toddlers and tiaras, the one that's dance moms. I mean, pick a subject. I mean, they gripe about each other all the time and behind each other's back, and I mean that's what's on TV. Yeah. So it's unsettling for me because that's not the way we should be, obviously.
I grew up in a very small town, and to the best of my knowledge, we didn't have mean girls, and I feel so privileged to have had that experience. It brought an innocence. It kept an innocence. Some might even say a naivete that continues to this day, because I will always believe the best of people until they prove me wrong. But when there are people in my life who have been, as you call it, the mean girls or the mean women, I remove or distance myself from them, right to the point of making choices to either attend meetings or to do it by phone instead, because I don't need toxic people in my life.
That's right.
And I don't handle that well. I cut it out of my life. My women friends from college and elsewhere, I cherish them. And I think that there is an enormous amount of pressure on the internet, even among the younger. My daughter, who's in her early 30s, I mentioned that I thought it was so wonderful that there was parenting advice that we never had. Your baby is the size of an avocado right now, or it's this, that, or the other thing. And she said, no, there's a lot of pressure to always know what's next. And if you have a different parenting style, someone will disagree with you or judge you. And I never thought of it that way. So it really is a choice to be around those kinds of people if you can. It's not always possible to avoid it. But I think it's a lot of pressure today because of the lack of civility in general. And so we can do it one family at a time, one person at a time, by just being nice and accessible and real, genuine, authentic ourselves.
I think you said
or we can write articles on the internet about the mean girls.
Or we could do that, right?
Well, but we have a voice. I mean, that's what the whole show is about today. I mean, we talk about these things because we want our opinions to start discussions, not end them. And that's Madeleine Albright. She's one of my favorites. And, there is no right or wrong in all these things. There is no great magic solution. But when we talk about these things, my hope and my wish and my prayer for everybody listening today is that you listen to these powerful women's voices and you think about your life. You think about what's going on, because sometimes there are leaders in these different mom groups that can just step up and make all the difference just by, including somebody or saying, all right, come on, guys, knock it off. If you're a leader in your group, lead with dignity, lead with grace, lead with style, and be wary of the children you're raising today, because I'm finding, just like the rest of the gals here today, that those boundaries of good taste, of don't talk religion and politics at the dinner table, please and thank you, all of those things that are considered old-fashioned are going by the wayside. And those are things that are meant to ease us socially, to help us all get along. Good fences make good neighbors. Another one that I don't see, kids with cell phones calling my house till 11 o'clock at night. We didn't do these things. We could not do these things. And so as much as we might be considered old fuddy-duddies by some people, these things need to be talked about because we have decisions to make. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about cyber everything with respect to commonality. We'll be back after the break.
We're Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and we'll return after these short messages.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Improper posture can lead to low back pain, but exercise can alleviate some of the pain. Walking doesn't cause lumbar pain, but because you are doing repetitive motion, it can make it worse if your posture is incorrect. When you do not stand properly, the ligaments and tendons around your spine can become overworked and cause pain. Inflammation and arthritis surrounding those nerves can also cause pain in your lumbar area. Tight hamstrings and hip flexors can cause your posture to be distorted, and that can put pressure on your lower back, so be sure to keep those areas flexible with effective stretching. To alleviate low back pain, keep the muscles of your core strong. When you are walking, running, or doing any form of exercise, pull your belly button to your spine and keep your core muscles tight and engaged. I'm Annette Hammond. Like us on Facebook at Fitness Minute with Annette Hammond.
It's words you never heard.
The letter F was salvaged from the linguistic scrap heap by the Romans. It has remained in use in the Roman alphabet ever since, and now accounts for 2.5% of any page of written English. So today I thought I would give you some fantastic words that start with the letter F. False eloquence is an 18th century word for lying. Fanfaronade is a 17th century word for an arrogant boaster. While a flapdoodler is a 19th century slang word for a person who talks nonsense and rubbish. A filly-loo is a noisy uproar. And my favorite F word ever, floxy-noxy-knee-hilly-pilly-fication, which means worthless trivia. For more letter of the day words, download my free app at toofunnyforwords.com.
It's words you never heard.
I'm Carolyn Davidson, and you can have fun challenging your words you never heard vocabulary with my free app, Too Funny for Words.
Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Linda Crater, Frankie Picasso, and Robin Bieseman, and we are the party of four today. And our roundtable topic discussion is commonality and things that set us apart, things that bring us together. One of my hot buttons lately is manners. Manners matter, and manners exist to ease social situations, to help us all get along. When you teach your son or daughter to introduce themselves, that's so that when they are out in public, that the group that they're part of doesn't feel awkward or weird or doesn't know how to begin a conversation. They don't know who you are. All of these things, teaching your child to put his hand out and make eye contact, all of these social graces are there to ease social situations. They're not being taught today. And I'm going to start with my first big hot button with these things. And I don't know how it is around the country, so I'm going to ask you guys, because you guys represent different regions. The biggest problem I have in my area is people's children calling me by my first name. I am not your peer. I'm not your best friend. I'm not your sandbox buddy. And so it's very off-putting for me to have someone 6, 7, 8-year-old child call me Sandra. Now, I have corrected them. I got a lot of pushback when my kids were tiny. My kids are 10 and 13 now. I got a lot of pushback here when I would correct people and say, I miss Beck, I miss Beck, my Miss Beck. And so I settled on a compromise of I miss Sandra because my kids have their dad's last name. I'm a single mom. It was confusing. I'll grant them that. So I became Miss Sandra. I am the only parent that I know of that goes by Miss Sandra. Everybody else, their children and my children, I'm like, you are not to use their first name. But they're like, Mom, it's okay. I'm like, you're not their peer. Do you guys have the same naming phenomenon? Because a name gives us respect. When I say it's Mrs. Bieseman, Mrs. Picasso, Mrs. Crater or Crater, it's different. Sorry, Linda, I keep butchering your name.
I know, it's quite all right.
But I'm not their peer. So I'm going to go, let's see, oh my gosh, everybody's lighting up on my screen here. I'm going to go to Linda Crater first, then Robin Bieseman, and then Frankie Picasso. Go, girls.
I think part of it is regional. In the South, calling you Miss Sandra would be normal. That's exactly how the protocol goes. I am south of the Mason-Dixon line, but I would say that it's Mrs. Crater, and I always look around for my mother-in-law. It's always been the first and last name. I would be comfortable with Miss Linda. I'm okay with that. But I agree with you. I don't want to be called by my first name by someone. And I don't know if your children have ever done this to you, but when they can't get your attention, when they were young teens, they would go, well, Linda. And I refused to respond when they called me by my first name. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yes, I do think that having a naming protocol should be your choice. And others should follow what you're asking them to do. If they want to do something differently, okay. But your name is your name.
All right. Robin.
Well, I've been Miss Robin for a long time. I was a camp mom, and that's how I introduced myself to children, bending over, shaking their hand, looking in the eye and say, hi, I'm Miss Robin. So I give them that permission. But if there's a parent that says, this is Mrs. Bieseman, then I won't correct that at all. That's up to the parent to be training. But I've been known as Miss Robin for the longest time. So because I work with teens and kids. But I don't think I've had anybody call me by my first name under, 16.
Wow. Wow. What about you, Frankie? What's going on up in Toronto?
I would never have called my parents' friends by their first name, ever, even in my 20s, until they invited me and they finally said, you can call me Sandra. I was called Mama P. My kids' friends would always call me Mama P. And that was okay. Because Mrs. Picasso sounds, it wasn't Mrs. Picasso, but it sounded really, awkward. But Mama P was good because I was the house where everybody came to. I was the mom. So that was great and that was fine. But I did not let them call me by my first name.
No.
There's just a level of disrespect there.
Agree.
There is. Well, and disrespect is what we're talking about today. So many things in the pursuit of, you know, these young people wanting to make sure that they're noticed, that they're heard, that they're valued. This term boundaries, you know, keeps coming up, and it's like we had very clear boundaries when I was growing up in the upper Northeast. Now, I know everybody's here from different parts of the country, different parts of the world, but there were very different protocols, like, you know, even old fashioned ones. Good fences make good neighbors. You know, you don't call somebody's house after 8 o'clock at night.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
you know, now I see, you know, texting goes on, you know, all hours, and it's different. And I don't know if it's just because I'm getting older and cranky, or if it really is getting older, because my dad will say things and I'm like, you're right, Dad, and the kids are like, well, that's because you guys are old. And I don't know how much it is. Yeah, and but it's different. There's no, you know, the kids in our middle school, they have this Medal of Honor program, and you know, my one son got a medal for integrity, and I thought, how strange is that we're rewarding integrity, but yet we're not teaching it anymore. So we can recognize it and give a medal, but what are we teaching our kids about integrity and honor and discipline and respect? I mean, I don't know what's happening, and so I feel really confused.
Well, I think that obviously it comes from home. And one of the things I think about is, like, say you're taking your child to the movies and your one child just turned 8, and it's $1 more for them to go to the movies. Mm. And so you're saying, just tell them you're 7, it's okay. Mm-hmm. And those kind of things that we do, or tell them, would you tell them I'm not home? When you get a phone call, things like that. That
great examples.
To me, that chips away at integrity. It shows, hey, it's okay. So this comes to mind for that.
Oh, I'm just sitting over here because I did get my son into a kid movie once, but I didn't tell him to say that. But he's so small that they're like one kid and one adult. I'm like, yeah. But you're right. I mean, well, I mean, what do you want to say?
You didn't tell him to say that you were 7.
Right. No, but I also didn't.
There's a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah, but I didn't open my big trap either. But yeah, I mean, these little things matter, and kids do watch more about what you do than what you say. And you guys all have grandbabies, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have new grandchildren, 9 and 11. We just got in October, so I don't have babies.
But we have, you know, but when you look at them, like, I don't have any grandbabies yet. I'm still raising my babies, but my friends, some of them have grandbabies acquired by marriage. Mm-hmm. And it's been interesting to me to watch, and I live in a multi-generational household with my dad and my kids. It's interesting to watch the behaviors the kids model after, which is much more powerful than what the parent is saying.
It's brilliant, because I think the pendulum is swinging. Maybe I'm just an eternal optimist, but I think the pendulum is swinging. I think people have realized that the incivility has got to stop, that lying is not okay. My children used to get into a lot of trouble if they lied to me. If they did something wrong, okay, we could address that. But if you tried to lie about it, now the punishment was going to be twice as difficult, because it just was not acceptable. And that's still a real big deal breaker for me personally. If someone lies to me, that means they're not trustworthy in my book. But I do think, when you're talking about the multi-generational, I think that pendulum is swinging from this incivility to people recognizing how important it is to have boundaries, to have manners, to put some of these limits into place. Because when we knew the social mores and what we were supposed to do or not supposed to do, if you chose to break from them, you also chose to accept the consequences. Now there are few consequences, and I think that has been recognized. And I personally believe that we're going to move back to more of the old, I don't want to call them rules because that sounds limiting, but I really think it just would like to say the social mores that allowed us to have a little bit of structure and gave us expectations.
Frankie, you have something to add to Linda's camp.
Yes. Well, I told my kids that if they told me the truth, no matter what, if it was bad or good, whatever, they would not get in trouble by me. However, if they lied, it would be double trouble. And so we maintained an open relationship, and it encouraged them to always come to me and tell me stuff that that was on their minds, or that they did or they felt guilty about, and we could talk through those things rather than have it eat away at them, and the guilt eat at them, and who knows how that would extrapolate in the future.
Well, the lying thing, from what I have, I'm one of those moms that has kids in my house all the time. A lot of kids that are latchkey kids, or kids who have problems with their parents, they'll come to my house and they'll talk. And what I think with a lot of the lying thing is the kids don't trust the parent, or they're not comfortable enough to tell the parent the truth. I'm not saying in every case. I mean, some kids are just little liars from the start. You can see that. But by and large, kids will come and tell me the truth, or they'll probably, like Robin, like, you're a Mrs. B, or, they'll tell you things that they won't tell their own parents, because there's not that comfort level or that trust built in. And Robin, do you see that a lot in your ministry?
A lot. Yeah, that's why we had the teen group, and they could say things that they couldn't say at home. I wasn't a risk. I wasn't going to ground them. I wasn't going to scream and yell at them. What I do understand is the way that kids, and I would say adult, we've been talking about mean people, but there's a reason why. They weren't born like that. There's a reason behind. That's where my heart jumps in. How can I help you get healed so that you don't keep doing this? Because you're not happy either. So the kids would do that. They would, their parents were shocked at what they knew. Wow, what they'd say. They couldn't believe it.
We do. We teach our kids to hate. We teach our kids to retaliate. We teach our kids how to handle their anger. They see it in the adults every day. Boy, we could go another couple hours on this, girls, but I need to take us to the end of the show. I want to thank Robin Bieseman from Eugene, Oregon, Linda Crater from Washington, D.C., Frankie Picasso from Toronto, Ontario, on behalf of Sandra Beck and Dynamic Women Talk Radio. I'm so glad that you are here. I hope that we use these opinions today to start discussions, not end them. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to anybody that will listen, so that we can start changing some of these trends one day at a time. For Sandra Beck and Linda Crater and Dynamic Women Talk Radio, we'll be back again next week with more great commentary like we did today. Saved by the Bell.
Bye-bye.
Say that. Saved by the Bell.
Thank you for tuning in today to Dynamic Women Talk Radio, and join us each week. You can find more shows on dynamicwomentalkradio.com.